Ladies and gentlemen, capital G back at it with Jegantha the Wellspring. Quirky, very weird commander with quite the origin story for this particular deck and quite the interesting destination as well. But before we get into that, excited if you like what you see, please like and subscribe. I'm looking to get to the requisite numbers to start monetizing the channel, something I've never pushed for previously. But I'm looking to do so this year. That is one of my goals. Hopefully we can achieve that. And of course, we have our Discord group, free to join, free to play, Dungeons and Cardboard. Play Commander or any other format of Magic you like. We play lots of Flesh and Blood. For both games, we actually have League play with prizes, free to play, free to join. We've also got lots of Dungeons and Dragons going. We've got a Halo group going right now, in fact. So come hang out with some cool people. Might be able to play some games with me if we run into each other, or perhaps I'll run into Bulldog and potentially end up on his Twitch stream or YouTube channel. So be sure to look out for us and all the cool people on our channel. And yeah, let's get into the deck itself, shall we? For starters, lots of love for those antlers. Those are amazing. But we're not here for antlers. We are here for this elemental elk. 4 generic mana as well as a red or a green mana to cast this 5/5 creature. Tap, add white, blue, black, red, and green mana to our mana pool. This cannot be spent to pay generic mana cost. What that means, of course, is that if a spell costs white, black, and 3, well, you tap Jegantha, you can spend the white and black mana, but you cannot spend the remaining colors on that spell. They can be used for other spells or abilities that's during that phase or that step of the turn. But you cannot use it on that. You cannot use it on that spell because they cannot pay the generic part of a mana cost. Still, as weird as that is, it still provides us all 5 colors, and we can cast multiple spells a turn very easily with this. It also has this weird thing called Companion. So if you miss Dichoria or miss the whole Companion thing, how it used to work is that, and in fact it still works this way, is that when you build your deck, if you've met the Companion clause, so for example, if I build a deck and I don't have any card in my starting deck with more than one of the same mana symbol and its mana cost. So for example, spells that cost double white, as long as I don't have any of those, I could in concept have my Companion ready to go, and when I want to call upon it, pay 3 mana at sorcery speed to bring it to my hand from outside the game. So it would provide us a 101st card. And from there I can, cast it and do whatever normally. So the reason I bring that up is because Jegantha used to be the companion to Golos. So this is a deck actually run in paper, and I used to run a Golos deck with Jegantha as the companion. And of course I would tap Jegantha and pay most of Golos' cost for his activated ability. But this got banned. So, bye Felicia. Jegantha has since stepped up and become the commander. I could not imagine any other 5-color commander to lead the way. The deck itself, although I am no longer bound by the companion clause, when you run a companion as your commander, you are not bound by this clause. But I stuck with the clause anyways, so none of the spells in the deck have a doubled mana symbol in its mana cost. Still, what a great leader. I'm going to follow Jegantha all the way to the end. All the way to the maze's end. That's what we're doing. It used to be a Golos Gates deck. Now we're making it a Jegantha Gates deck. Why am I saying Gates? Because that's what Maze's End was all about. So Maze's End is our win condition. Enters the battlefield tapped. It's a land. We can tap it for a generic mana, or we can pay 3 generic mana, tap it, and return this to our hand to go get a gate card from our library. put it onto the battlefield tapped. Or put it onto the battlefield, in fact. Gates inherently come into the battlefield tapped. If, on resolving this ability, we control 10 or more gates with different names, we win the game. The gates, of course, represent the guilds of Ravnica. They enter the battlefield tapped. They tap for one of two colors. For example, the Azorius Guildgate taps for white or blue. Boros Guildgate, white or red, etc., etc. There is one for each of the 10 guilds, as well as the Gateway Plaza, which is a land that enters the battlefield tapped, must be sacrificed unless we pay 1 generic mana. And when we can't start tapping it, it taps for mana of any color. So this plus the guild gates gives us a total of 11 gates in the deck. So the idea is once we activate Maze's End and put our 10th gates down with it, we win the game. That is the game plan. Let's see the rest of the deck to see what helps us get there. Starting with the Amulet of Vigor. This is a cool card. All our gates come into the battlefield tapped. So by having the Amulet of Vigor of play, we get to untap those gates right away and use them the turn that we play them. That is amazing. All of a sudden our guild gates go from, kind of not that good to absolutely amazing. Running the Arcane Signet because our commander, although it's only red or green in its mana cost, because it can tap for all 5 colors, has a 5-color identity. Therefore, Arcane Signet taps for any mana we want, any color mana we want. Commander Sphere, same deal. Fellwar Stone. I don't care what our opponents are playing. Chances are we can use the colored mana. Running the Legacy Weapon. Here's a spicy piece. Jegantha cannot cast the Legacy Weapon, but Jegantha can certainly activate it. So, by spending 1 mana of each color, remove target permanent from the game. Just boom. Tap our commander, remove, exile a permanent. Also, if the Legacy Weapon would be put into a graveyard from anywhere, we could shuffle it back into our library, so it gives us a little bit of resistance to mill strategies. Soul Ring is our last artifact. Helps us pay generic mana costs very easily. Moving on to creatures, we've got 17 of them, including Azusa, Lost But Seeking. Gives us 2 additional line drops on our turns. Cloud Blazer draws a couple of cards, gains us some life. District Guide lets us go get a basic land or a gate, reveal it, put into our hand. Faber Elder. For a white, a green, and 1, this tree folk has vigilance, has +1/+1 for each color amongst permanents we control. And for each color amongst permanents we control, we can tap this to add 1 mana of that color. So, if all 5 of our colors are represented, this taps for 5 mana. Garth One-Eye, for example, is all 5 colors. Tap our Jegantha, just to cast the Garth One-Eye in 1 shot, just boom. 5 mana Human Wizard, and just happens to provide us access to 6 very useful cards. We have to pay for the cards if we actually want to cast them, but that's alright. Most of them are pretty cheap to cast, such as Disenchant, which is a white and 1 to destroy an artifact or enchantment. Brain Geyser, blue X sorcery, draws X cards. Terror, a black and 1 to destroy a non-black, non-artifact creature. Shivan Dragon, that is red and 4 for a 5/5 flying dragon. And we can pay a red to give that dragon +1/+0 until end of turn. Regrowth, a green and 1 generic for that sorcery, which lets us bring any card from our graveyard back to our hand. And lastly, of course, the legendary Black Lotus, which is 0 to cast, tap, sack, get 3 mana of any 1 color. Gatecreeper Vine. This lets us go get a basic or a gate, put into our hand. Gemhide Sliver. I am running a total of 4 slivers. It's not a lot, but I figured the incidental synergy is useful, especially if we get 2 or even 3 of them out. So Gemhide Sliver says all slivers have tap, add 1 mana of any color. Just a great mana dork for us. Goblin Anarchomancer. Each spell we cast that's red or green costs 1 less. So it reduces the cost of our commander and of a lot of our spells. Gretchen, Twitch Willow. Blue and green for this 0/4 Halfling Druid. We could pay 2 generic, a green and a blue to draw a card and put a land from our hand onto the battlefield, hopefully accelerating our Gates plan. Harmonic Sliver. Here's a good one. When this enters the battlefield, destroy target artifact or enchantment. And if we have this out and then find our mana slivers, hey, destroy more artifacts or enchantments that way. Kess, Dissident Mage. That's a red, a black, a blue, and 1 for this 3/4 flying wizard. And during each of our turns, we can cast an instant or sorcery card from our graveyard. Just reuse our instants and sorceries. Awesome. A card cast this way gets exiled, regardless of whether or not it resolves. Knight of Autumn, a white, a green, and 1 for this 2/1 Dryad Knight. We can make it a 4/3 by adding some counters to it, or we can destroy an artifact or enchantment, or we can gain 4 life. Lots of cool tricks. Kenios and Tiro. Used to run them as commanders, now run them in the 99 here. Because, hey, Jegantha can tap and pay for it all on its own and still have a mana left over. 2/8 Human Soldier, and at the beginning of your end step, draw a card. Each player may put a land card from their hand onto the battlefield. Then each opponent who didn't draws a card. So a little group huggy, but lets us draw a card, lets us play extra lands. Forwards our strategy. Mana with Sliver. Again, Sliver creatures tap for a mana of any color. Necrotic Sliver. It's a bit of a rattlesnake, this one. While this is on the battlefield, all slivers have pay 3 generic, sacrifice the permanent, destroy target permanent. So yeah, I'll trade a sliver for, a big thing that's coming at me. Sure thing. Phylath, World Sculptor. This does not synergize with our gates, unfortunately. But still, 6 mana gives us a 5/5. And when this enters, it comes with a green plant creature token for each basic land we control. So even if we have 2-3 basics, that's okay. It's a couple extra blockers. And whenever we put a land onto the battlefield under our control, we still get to put 4 1/1 counters on a plant we control. So we don't get a lot of plants, but we can get some big ones. Thrasios rounds us out. Blue and green for this 1/3 Merfolk Wizard. 4 generic scry 1. Then reveal the top card of our library. If it's a land, put it onto the battlefield. If it's not, draw a card. Awesome. On to enchantments with Burgeoning. An opponent plays a land, we get to play a land. Druid Class. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under our control, we gain a life. Gives us a little bit of a buffer. We want to get to level 2, which lets us play an additional land on each of our turns. And there may be times where we just activate level 3. Level 3 says that when it becomes level 3, target land we control becomes a creature with haste and power and toughness equal to the number of lands we control. So if we need to, we can, smack one of our opponents upside the head with a land. Felidar Retreat. Now this is actually really, really good with our Maze's End. White and 3 for this enchantment with Landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, we can either make a cat beast creature token, or we can give the whole team a +1/+1 counter and vigilance until end of turn. So even just playing one land a turn and triggering one of these is good. But with this on the battlefield, activate our Maze's End, get a gate from our library onto the battlefield, trigger the Felidar Retreat. Play the Maze's End as our land drop for the turn. Not only have we progressed our plan, but we've built up our board twice with this enchantment. Guild Summit, blue and 2 for this enchantment. When this enters the battlefield, we can tap any number of untapped gates we control, draw a card for each gate tapped this way. Nice. And after that, and whenever a gate enters the battlefield under our control, we get to draw a card. Jeskai Ascendancy. This is a powerhouse in this deck. White, red, and blue. It has two things that trigger whenever you cast a non-creature spell. The first being that you get to untap all of your creatures and give them +1/+1 until end of turn. The second thing being that you can draw a card, and if you do, discard a card, so you can loot through the deck a little bit and buff the team. Fantastic. Rites of Flourishing, as Brian Canada likes to call it, double meat, double cheese. Green and 2 for this enchantment. At the beginning of each player's draw step, that player draws an additional card. Each player may play an additional land on their turns. So yes, very group huggy, a little risky, but we're playing a gate strategy. We'll take the help. Teamer Ascendancy rounds us out. Red, blue, and green creatures we control have haste. And whenever a creature of power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under our control, we may draw a card. So, let's say we have our Teamer Ascendancy, and then we put our Jegantha into play. We get to use our Jegantha right away, and we get to draw a card. Nice. 6 instants. Ancient Grudge helps us get rid of a couple of artifacts in a hurry. Red and 1 to destroy target artifact, and a flashback of 1 green mana. Crackling Doom. Black, white, and red deal 2 damage to each of our opponents, and then each opponent sacrifices a creature they control with the greatest power amongst those creatures. Crop Rotation, 1 green, sack a land, go get a land, whatever one we need. Faithful Mending, blue and white. You gain 2 life, draw 2 cards, and then discard 2 cards. And then flashback for a white, a blue, and 1. So this definitely helps us dig through the deck in a hurry, and it's very Jegantha friendly to cast. Return to Nature, destroy an artifact, enchantment, or exile a card from a graveyard. Terminate, to destroy target creature. It cannot be regenerated. Moving on to sorceries. Cartographer Survey. We got a lot of sorceries, by the way, so we'll go through this quickly. Green and 3 for Cartographer Survey. Look at our top 7 cards. Put 2 land cards from amongst them onto the battlefield tapped. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. This could whiff, but this can also hit anything. Doesn't matter if it's basic or gates or even a non-basic, non-gate land. We have a couple of those. This can put it into play for us if it hits. Circuitous Route. This will always hit. Search our library of up to 2 basic land cards or gates. Put them onto the battlefield tapped. Running Conflux. Now this is a tutor effect. So for 3 mana and 1 of each color, so total of 8, we get to search our library for a white card, a blue card, a black card, a red card, and a green card. Reveal those cards and put them into our hand. So yeah, 8 mana tutor for 5 cards. Yes, please. Culling Ritual. For 4 mana, we get to destroy each non-land permanent with mana value 2 or less. That includes signets, soul rings, talismans. Most creature tokens are 0 mana value. Gets elves, gets zombies, gets vampires, gets a lot of vampires, gets blood tokens, gets food tokens. This puts in a lot of work and gets us a lot of mana. Deadly Brew, green and black. For this sorcery, each player sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. If we sacrifice a permanent this way, we get to return another permanent card from our graveyard to our hand. Nice. Deafening Clarion, white, red, and 1 for the sorcery. Choose 1 or both effects. Deal 3 damage to each creature, or have creatures we control gain lifelink until end of turn. Demonic Tutor. Yes, I have one. Yes, it's in this deck. We get to search our library for any card put in our hand. Dune Blast. Green, black, white, and 4. Choose up to 1 creature. Ideally our commander. Destroy everything else. Gates Ablaze, another board wipe. Red and 2 for the sorcery. Deal X damage to each creature, where X is the number of gates we control. And Hour of Promise, great little ramp spell. Green and 4, go get any 2 land cards. No, there's no restriction. We're not restricted to basics, we're not restricted to gate, just any 2. And put them onto the battlefield tapped. Don't worry about the deserts clause, we're not running any deserts. But still, go get 2 lands, sure thing, I like that. Lavalanche. This can help us knock out a player, or at least knock a player down a peg. Green, red, black, and X. Deal X damage to target player or planeswalker. And each creature that planeswalker, that player or that planeswalker's controller controls. It's wordy, but basically, choose an opponent, send them back to the crater from which they crawled from. There we go. Merciless Eviction. Black, white, 4. And we get our choice of exiling all artifacts, creatures, enchantments, or planeswalkers. Reap and Sow. Let's go and get any land put onto the battlefield under our control. Or we can destroy a land with it. We're generally not going to destroy a land. We're just going to cast it for 4 and forward our board. Rip Apart. White, red. For this particular sorcery, and can blow up a variety of targets. We can either deal 3 damage to a creature or planeswalker, or we can destroy an artifact or enchantment. I like the variety here. Sylvan Scrying. Let's go get any land that we want, put it in our hand. Treasured Find. Take any card in our graveyard, put it back in our hand, then exile Treasured Find. I went with Treasured Find over effects like Regrowth or Balagad Recovery because it is super Jegantha friendly to cast. Urban Evolution rounds us out. Blue and green and 3 generic. Draw 3 cards and we can play an additional land this turn. 7 planeswalkers, by the way, just because they're all very colorful and all very useful to us. Let's start with Dakan Shadowslayer. Black, blue, white. This says there's a battlefield with a number of loyalty counters equal to the number of lands we control. We're trying to get a bunch into play, so he's going to come in with a bunch of loyalty. +1 to Surveil 2, help us dig out the good cards. -3 to exile target creature. And in the very rare event that we need the -6, it's there to put an artifact card from our hand or graveyard onto the battlefield. Gedron Dahada. That is a red, a black, a blue, and 1 generic for this planeswalker. Has protection from permanents with corruption counters on them. And of course, she hands out the corruption counters herself. +1 to have each opponent lose 2 life and regain 2 life. Then put a corruption counter on one other creature or a planeswalker. We can also -3 to gain control of a creature or planeswalker until end of turn. Untap it and put a corruption counter on it. If it's a creature, well, I mean, it'll gain haste until end of turn. But it's one of the rare things that lets you steal your opponent's planeswalkers, even if it's for a brief moment. Very few cards do that. -7, gain control of each permanent with a corruption counter on it. Don't think we're going to get there. That -3 is just too good to let us get to that -7, but you never know. Kiora the Crashing Wave. That's a blue, a green, and 2 generic to cast. 2 loyalty only, not a lot to start with. But +1 until your next turn, prevent all damage that would be dealt to and dealt by target permanent and opponent controls. So something dealing way too much damage, shut it down for a while. -1, draw a card, and we can play an additional land this turn. And then -5, if we somehow get to it, we get an emblem with, at the beginning of our end step, get a 9/9 Kraken. Lord Windgrace. Up until very recently, I had a Lord Windgrace deck in paper. I've since moved Lord Windgrace into the 99 here. Very Jegantha friendly to cast. Green, red, black, and 2 generics. So also helps us dig through the deck a little bit. So +2 to discard a card and draw a card. If we discarded a land, we can draw an additional card. -3 to return 2 land cards from our graveyard to the battlefield. So if somebody is messing with our lands, we can get some of them back. The -11 lets us destroy up to 6 non-land permanents and create 6 2/2 Cat Warrior creature tokens with Forest Walk. We're not really going for the -11 here, let's face it. The 2 and the +2 and the -3 are both just very good in what we're playing with today. Now our set of the Ancient Way. White, red, blue, and 1 for this Planeswalker for loyalty to start. For +1, we can gain 2 life, and we get our choice of a blue, a red, or a white mana to spend on a non-creature spell. -2 to draw a card, then we may discard a card. If we discard a non-land card this way, deal damage equal to its mana cost or mana value to target creature or Planeswalker. Just kind of kick it across the head, shall we say. And then -6 to gain an emblem of whenever you cast a non-creature spell, this emblem deals 2 damage to any target. So I'm generally running this for the +1 effect. The -2 is useful, but I'm generally running this for the +1 effect. But if I get to 6, I'll activate it for sure, because we've got a bunch of non-creature spells. Another example of a non-creature spell is Ral Storm Conduit. Red, blue, and 2 generic for this 4 loyalty Planeswalker. Has a triggered ability of whenever we cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, deal 1 damage to target opponent or Planeswalker. And then +2 to scry 1 helps us dig a little bit, or -2 to copy our next instant or sorcery spell. Our last Planeswalker is Sarkhan Unbroken. Red, blue, green, and 2 generic for a 4 loyalty Sarkhan. +1 to draw a card, then add a mana of any color to our mana pool. Card draw, ramp, perfect. -2 to get a dragon because we want to defend ourselves. -8, don't worry about that. We're not running any dragon cards in our deck, so don't worry about the -8 here. Just the +1 and the -2 are what we're playing with. All right, let's just move on to our lands. That's all we have left. We've already looked at our Gates package, so let us look at our remaining mana base. Starting with the Bonder's Enclave. Just the source of card draw in our mana base. The City of Rast taps for any color mana we need, but it deals damage to us. Command Tower also taps for mana of any color that we need. Exotic Orchard taps for mana of any color our opponents could produce, but no matter what our opponents are producing, still useful to us. Field of the Dead, because yes, zombie tokens can help us win the game. Running 4 each of our forests, islands, mountains, plains, and swamps. Why 4 of each? Because what I'm actually running, and let's use the forest as our example. When I got my Adventures in the Forgotten Realms bundle, it came with a pack of all 20 of the flavor text lands in foil. So threw them in the deck and made that sort of a deck building restriction. So I've got all of my basic lands have a different flavor text to it. I thought it was pretty sweet. 2 more lands left to talk about. Let's start with Mosswort Bridge. Has Hideaway, which means we can look at the top 4 cards of our library and tuck one of them underneath. Yes, the land comes onto the battlefield tapped, but once it's ready to go, we can tap it for a green, or once we have 10 power worth of creatures on the board, we can pay a green, tap this, and play the exile card without paying its mana cost. Our last land is the ever-controversial Temple of the False God. We are actually running a total of 39 lands in the deck. So, getting to 5 lands in play and being able to tap this for 2 generic and really help us pay for those generic mana costs, not a big deal. On that, I believe we've come to the end. Jegantha the Wellspring, leading us through the maze. So I hope you all like that. A little backstory on this particular deck. It is one I actually run on paper, although I do admit I don't actually have the Conflux or the Amulet of Vigor. I'm working on acquiring those cards to add to the deck. I've got some filler cards in there in the meantime, but this is, again, a deck I do run in paper, so you might see this one if you come join the Discord group. Again, if you enjoyed what we had here today, please like and subscribe. Come join us on the Discord group, and hope to see you again down the line. Enjoy the rest of your night, and we'll catch you again very soon. Bye for now.